revenge is near. Correction, my fist is near.
Alright, so we're back for another episode of Radio Free Innsmouth. If my voice is a little screwed up, sorry, I caught some kind of nasty bug or something. I've been sick as shit, and I want to say, I don't know how you normies that don't go to the gym every day handle it. Like, I don't even know how I manage to handle living that way every day, because since I've been able to go to the gym for a couple days, I'm like angrier than I've ever been before. I'm just fucking like pacing around the apartment, just getting mad at very small things. No way to let out a lot of physical aggression. So yeah, I don't know how you normies do it. Whatever, man. The zen of normies. But anyways, I saw this concert this week. The headliner was Impiety, and then the supporting act was Divine Eve. It's either working its way up the west coast or moving out towards the east coast. I can't remember. But if you're a metal fan, you should go check these guys out, because one, Impiety, the headlining band, is really cool. They have song titles like Necro's Sadomatic Frost Goats and Bestial Goat Vomit, and they sound like this. So they're nice guitar solos, especially for such a chaotic style. So these guys are what's called war metal, so that's like a blend of black metal, grindcore, and thrash metal. But unlike most of those bands, they've got decent riffs and memorable songs. Really wicked vocals too. Highly recommend that. So yeah, they got songs about cyber goats and fucking frost runes and shit, and they really fast and chaotic. Go see that. But more importantly, Divine Eve, one of the great underrated US death metal bands of all time. So already with that little intro, you can probably guess who their biggest influence is. There's a lot of Celtic Frost in here, which is good because Celtic Frost is great. So these guys started out as Divine Eve, then broke up, and then like one of the main guys started a band called Crimson Relic that played a bunch of unreleased Divine Eve songs. Check out the groove on that. And then Crimson Relic broke up and Divine Eve came back. So Crimson Relic and Divine Eve essentially the same band. And they played plenty of Crimson Relic songs when I saw them live too. So yeah, they're death metal / doom metal, but that's kind of a misnomer. They're more like really thrashy death metal that occasionally slows down and gets really, really heavy. So technically death doom, but not really the kind of thing that label usually entails. You could compare them to their fellow Americans, Cyanide. But anyways, go see that. Like, I don't know, after hearing those two samples and my descriptions of the bands, and you still want to go see those tours,
like, get a life. Get alive!
But anyways, hearing all that Celtic Frost influence goodness got me to thinking maybe I should do a show on Celtic Frost, since they're possibly the most important early black metal band, maybe the second most important after Bathory. Celtic Frost, and I'm also including the pre-Celtic Frost band Hellhammer when I make that assertion. So, Celtic Frost formed in the 80s in Switzerland, so that's already rather unusual. That's not really known as a major metal mecca, apart from, Coroner and Samael, I guess. That's the only other two big Swiss bands I can think of. Oh, Paysage Diver, but that came way later. But anyways, Celtic Frost, they're nominally a thrash band, but they're very avant-garde about it, and they're also definitely a black metal band. They were one of the first bands to do the face paint thing. They got the spikes and all that, and they're singing about wacky occult stuff. Not necessarily Satanism, more like generalized darkness and spooky shit. Like, they got songs about Gilles de Rais and a lot of songs just about like weird rituals or strange nightmare visions. But I wanted to do a thing taken up last week where I did a Defend Your Shitty Taste. I'm going to defend the album Into the Pandemonium which is the third Celtic Frost album, or technically the second if you don't count Morbid Visions, but everybody counts Morbid Visions as a full length. So it's the third full length album. 1987. By this point, they had established themselves as black metal titans that essentially helped birth a new genre of music. And they decided to sow their wild oats a bit and get a little bit weird. So the first thing you hear when you put on the album is so that's actually pretty standard Celtic Frost type stuff. Tom G. Warrior, the lead guy in Celtic Frost, he might recognize him as the dude that was riding the bicycle in that H.R. Giger documentary, like a goof. He's sort of like black metal James Brown. He's doing a lot of hey, ow, all the time. Except he actually feels good still. Hi-oh! You get it? Because James Brown did that song, I Feel Good, but he's fucking dead, so he doesn't feel so good anymore. You get what I'm saying, YouTube? Boo! You stink! Oh, I guess we'll move on then.
Walk out the door, you see someone that you know, and they ask you how you are, and you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
So, they start out with a pretty typical Celtic Frost riff, but then you get farther into the song and you're hit with this. Recognize the lyrics yet? I bet Tommy does. So, that whole time you thought you were listening to a new Celtic Frost song, but it was actually a cover of Wall of Voodoo's Mexican Radio, classic new wave song from the late 70s, early 80s. But they managed to play it in their own style so convincingly that you might not even have noticed until you hit the chorus. And that's kind of the feel of the album. There's a lot of messing with the listener. So I would say the album proper starts with the next song, since the first one's a cover. The next song is just called Mesmerized. So there we go, that's a more typical Celtic Frost, bombastic, doomy intro riff. But in this song, you're going to hear Mr. Warrior experimenting with some new vocal styles. Apparently, he'd been listening to a lot of, I want to guess, Christian Death and Susie and the Banshees, with mixed results. They're definitely an acquired taste. But the riffs themselves are very solid. The guitar playing is very interesting. Watch what he does here with the clean guitar. Just hitting the 3 notes, beginning of a chord in sequence over and over. And it leads into this transition with the bass doing a lot of interesting counterpoint to the guitars. And then that 3-note figure comes back. So that thing from earlier was actually a leitmotif the whole time, and now he's brought it back and modified it. You heard a little bit of a female vocal in the outro there. If you ever want to blame somebody for bringing that into black metal, it's Celtic Frost. Personally, I don't mind it on this album. I think it's well done. But anyways, I know that that's a leitmotif because Tom G. Warrior is a very smart guy, and he specifically mentioned Wagner as a major influence on this album in several interviews. But here's the first iteration of that leitmotif in the beginning of the song. So that very simple doon 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 kind of played fast twice and then slower a third time. Then that motif experienced a resurgence later in the song, but with a distorted guitar as this riff. So the way to enjoy Into the Pandemonium is to accept it as an album of the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Get 3 coffins ready.
Actually, Clint Eastwood said that in A Fistful of Dollars, not the good, the bad, the ugly.
My mistake. 4 coffins.
So the undisputably good parts of this album are when they pick up with where they left off on the prior album, 2 Megatherion, which is a certified black metal classic. Very heavy black thrash, but with a lot of doom metal type stuff going on in a uniquely Celtic Frost way, as seen in the song Babylon Fell. So a very heavy riff, but also kind of weird. And the reason that it feels weird is because it's actually made up of different modular parts that can be recombined and have other attachments. So between the kind of complexity you get from the modular parts and the Wagnerian leitmotifs, you can see why I would say black metal is classical composition continued in a new form. So they've already switched up that riff. They kept the part, but they've added a different tail to it, so to speak. Then we get into the thrash metal groove. So that's a good song. Later on, they bring back that little bit of modular riffing as a separate leitmotif in the breakdown to the song. So there's a very headbangable riff, good old-fashioned chugs. But you remember that intro riff, watch how they're going to use part of the module and take it in a new direction here. See what they did there? Pretty cool stuff. And it's such a strange riff, and yet they give it a very powerful groove so it becomes catchy. It's a very high-level songwriting, also a weird moan from Mr. Tommy G there. That might be filed under the ugly side, but getting back to the good, the unabashedly good parts of the album, you got the crazy solo section in the penultimate track, Rex Eri. I like the drum beat here too. Listen to this weird guitar solo. This odd burst of disjointed noise. Like something crawling up out of Cthulhu's pit after he took a dump. Kind of weird effects on it too. It's a very strange tone. Weird stuff all around, but it fits with the bizarre and hellish tone of the album. This last region awakes on fire, a cosmic cry. So here the vocals work for them. Those are good vocals. He's going in between that more gothic vocal style and his normal vocals. He's actually one of the progenitors of the whole death metal thing, believe it or not. But anyways, that's the good of the album. The bad of the album is when the experimentation goes a little too far up its own ass and you get stuff like this. I don't know what the hell that's doing on a black metal album, but they felt the need to do it for 6 minutes. You know, nice work, I guess. Very open-minded, yes. But the ugly of the album is the interesting part, where you have experimentation meeting the old school black metal influences and like sort of sometimes working, sometimes not really working, and then sometimes doing really very amazing things. So, for an example of the ugly, let's go to the intro to the final, most epic song on the album. I'm willing to bet that a certain young Czech band named Master's Hammer was a big fan of this part of the album. This is the real symphonic black metal here, folks. Real violins, you're hitting timpanis, all kinds of that good shit. And then we get to some vocal experimentation. A little bit cheesy. I will admit that. Kind of works. Certainly feels very epic and pompous, which the name of this song is Rex Irae Requiem, so the King of Wrath Requiem. So it's like the last visions of a dying monarch as he looks out over his desiccated realms and shakes his fists at the gods. That was good stuff right there. I don't care what anyone says. And the use of foreboding strings there is excellent. But yeah, no, the female vocals there may be a bit much, but they come back in a different part of the song, and they're done a little bit more dramatically and in a more emphatic and interesting way, as you will now hear. Hopefully you don't have an allergy to orchestral percussion. Jesus. See, this is pretty good stuff. And I haven't really heard any other bands, yikes, pull off that kind of menacing dialogue between a male and a female quite like Celtic Frost have. It's more like this monarch is yelling at the voices inside his head. A little Macbeth, maybe. But yeah, no, really good song. And as I hopefully have demonstrated to you, a pretty good album. It's certainly something, you'll find something new to like about it every time. And you'll also find something new to go, wow, that's kind of weird. I wonder where they did that every time. And Tom G. Warrior still swears by this album. And I know it influenced a lot of people like Nocturnal Mortem and Master's Hammer, as I mentioned earlier, that are into the weirder side of black metal. So this is like the original, the alpha variety of the very strange black metal album, Celtic Frost Into the Pandemonium. Go check it out.
Hey, you in there! Here's 100 years supply of smoke signals for you.